Good Wednesday evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dana Porter. I'm the Public Affairs Section Manager for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And tonight's Wanna Go Hunting webinar is all about what we can hunt. This evening, our guests will cover a wide variety of hunting opportunities available in Wisconsin and what we are able to hunt in our state. The DNR's Wanna Go Hunting webinar series is designed for those interested in learning about hunting, fishing, and trapping. In each episode, features guest speakers sharing their experience getting started with the sport and common challenges faced by those new to hunting. So with that, I will turn things over to tonight's host, Bob Knack, the DNR's Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation Team Supervisor. Bob?
Thanks, Dana, and greetings to our viewers this evening. Thank you for joining us on a beautiful evening here in Wisconsin. This is the second episode in a series of webinars focused on novice hunters and hopefully providing all that information that you need to take that first step into giving hunting a try. Our first episode was called How Can Get Started, and talked about looking for a hunter education course, doing some research on our mentored hunting program, as well as looking at our Learn to Hunt programs. And so I would encourage you to check that out. Next in the series this evening, we're going to talk about what can you hunt. And Wisconsin is home to a lot of great hunting opportunities. Of course, I'm biased, born and raised here, but as you'll see this evening, there's a lot of really neat adventures that you can go on right outside your back door. And many of these animals and species that we hunt are within relatively close driving range for most of you here in the state. So looking forward to this evening's discussion. Next slide. We'll be joined by two panelists tonight, and you're going to hear from them in a little while for maybe a little bit deeper introduction, but we have wildlife biologist Jenna Malinowski with us. And then we have the founder of Color in the Outdoors, Chris Kilgore, and we'll have a short presentation here by myself, and then we'll get to some question and answers with Chris and Jenna. You will have the option to ask questions yourselves if you would like to type them in using the chat feature. We will get to those at the end of the program. And we're hoping to wrap this up by about 7:45 this evening, so we'll keep moving right along. Next slide, please. So what can we hunt in Wisconsin? And I'll preface this short presentation in that we're not covering all the details here. This is just scratching the surface of the species and opportunities that might interest you. And of course, if you see something, you might say, hey, that's close to home and something that I'm interested in. Of course, we would encourage you to research and explore the regulations and requirements around hunting that species even further. If you do have questions, you can certainly reach out to myself, Emily Eel. Our contact information will be at the end of the slide presentation, or any DNR biologist would certainly be able to help you out as well. So scratching the surface on, and I have these slides broken down by game species groups. We have the upland birds and turkey. I'll preface a lot of what I'm going to cover with some of these species. I'll refer to them as permit species, and those are species that are managed by management zone and time period, and with a specific number of permits that are available. So they're very, very tightly and closely managed here in the state, and I'll be sure to point out those species when we do come across them. So real quick, if you're thinking about upland birds here in Wisconsin, you right away think about ruffed grouse. We are the Park Falls, Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin is referred to the ruffed grouse capital of the world. Each year, Wisconsin ranks in the top 3 for the number of grouse hunters and the number of grouse harvested, largely due to excellent habitat conditions, mostly in northern Wisconsin. We do have 2 ruffed grouse zones in the state, a north and a south. They do have different bag limits and seasons. So if that's something you're planning to hunt, you'll want to make sure that you check that out. Moving on to our pheasants here in the state. We do have fairly good pheasant populations throughout the state, and certainly good pheasant hunting opportunities thanks to our pheasant stocking program. Pheasants can be found in Wisconsin from kind of the northwestern part of the state, if you follow along the western side of the state, and then from the middle to the south is typically our best pheasant hunting areas. This year, the DNR is planning to raise and release 75,000 pheasants on our public hunting grounds to provide increased hunting opportunity. And many of those properties that are stocked are close to population centers. So if you're located in southern Wisconsin, Madison, Milwaukee, Fox River Valley, check it out, because you might have a stocked pheasant property right nearby, and you could certainly take advantage of that as well. And as you can tell, I'm not going over season dates or anything like that. Again, if it's something you're interested, I would encourage you to take a deeper look. Moving on to turkeys, turkeys in Wisconsin is one of the best conservation stories and restoration stories in the country, for that matter. We went from basically a reintroduction of turkeys to now harvesting nearly 40,000 turkeys each spring in every county of the state. So hard to beat that. We rank number 1 or 2 in the country for the number of turkeys harvested. So clearly Wisconsin can be a destination state for our turkey hunting. I'd remind you that we do have a spring and a fall turkey hunting season. If you're interested in the spring season, which is very exciting because it's when the toms are gobbling and there's the breeding is going on, and you call them into close range. One of the most amazing hunts I think that you can have having a spring gobbler in front of you. The deadline to apply is December 10th. So you need to be thinking ahead. If you miss the deadline, that's okay. There are tags that go for sale over the counter in March. Likely those are kind of later in the season, but you still got a really great hunting opportunity there. Next slide, please. All right, moving on to migratory birds. Ducks, geese, doves, and woodcock. There are a few others that are less commonly hunted. I didn't include them here for those of you that might be thinking about coots or something else, but here in Wisconsin, our migratory bird season structure is the sideboards are dictated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because they are a migratory species. However, the states do get to operate within those guidelines, and so that's how we set our seasons each year. We have great waterfowl hunting here in the state. We're home to 5 million acres of wetlands. Of course, we have the Great Lakes surrounding us and the Mississippi River. And so where there's water, there's usually ducks and geese. And we also have Horicon Marsh, which is the largest freshwater cattail marsh in the country. And so add all that together, and we have some pretty great duck and goose hunting here in the state. Each year, we're ranked in the top 5 in the country for the number of waterfowl hunters. So you're kind of seeing a pattern here. You heard me talk about grouse hunters and now waterfowl hunters. Wisconsin has a very strong heritage of hunting, and you can hear that just from the facts and figures here that I'm sharing with you tonight. Dove hunting can be found throughout the state. I would encourage you to check the DNR webpage for managed dove fields on our public hunting grounds. Those are fields that are planted specifically for dove hunting. And dove hunting provides a great opportunity. Not only are they good to eat, pretty low equipment investment to hunt doves, and a great family activity. And so it's easy to take kids out dove hunting. If any of you are from the southern part of our country, you know there's a strong dove hunting heritage and traditions in those parts of our country. Reminder that dove season does open tomorrow morning, September 1st, along with early goose season and our early teal season. So if you're itching to get out very soon, those seasons open tomorrow. And again, look for more information online. And the last one here, woodcock, and something that I really enjoy hunting. Wisconsin ranks either first or second in the country for the number of woodcock hunters, again, a strong hunting heritage, and the number of woodcock harvested. And so they're a migratory species. Mostly in early parts of the season can be found in northern Wisconsin, although I know friends are telling me they're finding woodcock throughout the state. But this time of year, a lot of birds in northern Wisconsin. And then if you watch the weather, they will migrate through, and you'll find pockets in the southern part of the state that can provide a lot of really exciting hunting opportunities. So another really unique bird that we have here in the state. Next slide. All right, big game. Of course, deer. You can't think about hunting in Wisconsin without talking about our deer hunting. And we annually rank in the top 5 states for the total number of deer harvested. And that's tracked by the National Deer Association in their annual reports. We have around 600,000 deer hunters in the state that spend just over 7 million days afield each year. So very popular here in Wisconsin. We have about 300,000 hunters that hunt with archery equipment and a gun. And so I'd be remiss to say, we do have deer throughout the state, certainly. However, there are pockets of the state where there are fewer deer than other areas of the state. And so wanted to make sure to mention that. Our bear hunting here in Wisconsin is pretty exceptional as well. We support an annual harvest of approximately 4,000 bears each fall, usually placing Wisconsin #1 on the harvest list in the country. Again, kind of leading the way in our bear hunting. And we're really well known for producing some of the biggest bears in the country as well. Currently #1 in Boone and Crockett record book entries, and having twice as many entries as the #2 state already. So really high quality bear hunting here in the state. The population is doing very well. In fact, extending its range within the state in the western Wisconsin and even southwestern Wisconsin, where residents in those areas are learning to live with bears, much like our northern residents already know. And so we have great bear hunting in the state. It's also very popular. And so this is one of those permit species that I was talking about before, limited number of permits based on location and not so much time with bear, but in some parts of the state, depending on where you want to hunt, your waits are, 8-9 years. And then in other parts of the state where we're trying to be more aggressive on the bear population, you can get a tag every year, maybe every 2 years. So that really depends on where you're planning to hunt. And of course, we can't forget about elk. Yes, we do have an elk hunting season here in the state. It's very limited, as you can imagine. It's a once in a lifetime hunting opportunity. And currently the hunting occurs mostly in northern Wisconsin around our elk herd up there. We do have an elk herd that was introduced into the Jackson County part of the state. No hunting currently occurs with that herd, but I know that is in the plans here for the future. If you're interested in hunting elk in Wisconsin, the application deadline is May 31st of each year. So make sure you check that out. Next slide. All right, small game. Not a whole lot to say about this one. Rabbits and squirrels are fairly common. Also, some of the easiest game to get started hunting with. So again, and very can be found locally nearby where most people live for sure. Certainly on our public hunting grounds. And I suspect we'll be hearing more about small game when we talk with Jenna and Chris a little bit later in the episode here tonight. Next slide. All right, the Furbearers. These are the huntable Furbearers, and each of these Furbearers can also be trapped if that's something you're interested. Certainly want to encourage people to give trapping a try. One of the permit species on this list is our bobcats. We've steadily increased our bobcat harvest since 2014, thanks largely to some of the feedback we were getting from hunters and trappers out there saying that we could provide more opportunity. There was some feeling that we were being a little bit too restrictive with our bobcat tags. And the DNR implemented a research project that had the scientific data behind it to support that claim. And so since 2014, that the northern zone, again, this is a species that's managed by zones and time periods, but the harvest is more than tripled in the northern zone. And the southern zone was recently opened up to hunting, and we've seen a steady increase in the harvest in the southern zone as well. So we're able to provide a lot more bobcat hunting opportunities. And that increase in opportunities since 2014 does not seem to correspond to a decrease in the population. So again, it seems to be able to sustain that harvest. Again, the interest in pursuing bobcats has increased over the years as well, with about 29,000 people applying for a permit or a preference point in the 2022 season. The deadline to apply for a bobcat tag, if you're interested in pursuing that, is August 1st. And so as a hunter, again, that's part of knowing the game that you're intending to hunt, is to know when those application deadlines are. Raccoon hunting, very robust population here in the state, very adaptable. The last time that harvest totals for all states was recorded was in 2018 to the 19 season, and Wisconsin did have the highest estimated harvest of any state in the country. So again, lots of raccoons out there. They could be hunted or trapped, as I mentioned before, and also hunted at night with the aid of dogs. And so that's a really neat outdoor experience. If you haven't had a chance to do that, and you have some friends that do, I would certainly encourage you to give it a try. Fox and coyotes, pretty much on the same page there. Right now, typically in Wisconsin, I think we're seeing more coyotes than there are fox, but check out the seasons if you're interested on those. Of course, furbearers are harvested less for the food value, more for the fur value. Although certainly there is opportunities to consume some of them as well. I think I covered everything right there. Let's see the next slide. Yeah, so I know I went through that very quickly, and I just wanted to give you a taste of what Wisconsin has to offer. As you can see, we are leading the country in many categories, or at least in the top 5 for sure. And so we certainly would encourage you to get out and enjoy what Wisconsin has to offer. Contact information is here for myself and our hunting and shooting sports program specialist, Emily Eel. If you would have any questions, need somebody to take you hunting, we can try to help you out with all of that. So please reach out to us. Okay, enough of the presentation. Let's get on to hearing from our guest panelists. And you saw their pictures a little bit earlier when we started here, and I'll let you guys introduce yourself before we get into questions. And again, for those of you watching, if you do have questions, please type them in and we will answer them at the end of the episode here. So why don't we start with Chris Kilgore. If you want to just take a minute or two, Chris, to introduce yourself, and then we'll let Jenna introduce herself, and then we'll start with a couple questions.
Thanks very much, Bob. My name is Christopher Kilgore. I'm the founder and creator of the Color in the Outdoors, which is an outdoor engagement advocacy group here located in kind of central Wisconsin now. Lifetime resident of the state, and spend a ton of time outside doing as much as I possibly can year round. And I'll definitely talk, I think, more about that with some of these Q&A questions. So I'll stop talking now and hand it off to Jenna.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, Jenna Malinowski. I'm a wildlife biologist up in Iron County, stationed out of Mercer, Wisconsin. I'm an avid hunter and trapper. I'm co-creator of the second annual Women's Trap Camp here in Wisconsin through the Wisconsin Cooperative Trapper Education Program. And I guess with that, we can kick it off with questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jenna and Chris. And again, reminder, our intended audience here are novice hunters or those that are even just thinking about hunting. So we'll try to keep that in mind as we answer our questions. So let's just start it off with you, Jenna, since you're still, looks like you're unmuted. Why don't you tell us what species you most frequently hunt and why?
Sure. I would say I'm an opportunistic hunter. So I started out hunting a lot of waterfowl, living in Sheboygan County. It was a great water system, Sheboygan Marsh. Really enjoyed my time there. But as I transitioned to the Madison area for a few years, it was more pheasants, trapped a lot of raccoons, and then coming up north and in the plethora of grouse we have up here in upland hunting, I kind of transitioned more now to grouse hunting more than anything. Not only because there's a lot of grouse up here, plenty of opportunities, long season, but also I got a 2-year-old dog who forces me to leave the bow stand and come out to the field. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. It sounds like, I think a common theme I heard there is you're hunting whatever species is you're living the closest to, and that's not uncommon at all, to want to participate and find species that are close to home. So that was a really good answer. Chris, what about you? What do you most frequently hunt and why?
I would definitely agree with the opportunist sentiment, but I think from timing, just because of all the different things that I do, I definitely carve out time for deer season every year. I love to bow hunt, love to gun hunt. I very much like venison, so I mean that's definitely top on my list of making sure I have time allotted for that. I would say a second would definitely be grouse. It's a great hunting experience. I love to be up in the northern part of the state as well. So when I'm up there and time permits, I would say that's definitely second on my list.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so, Chris, you're an experienced hunter yourself. What game species would you recommend for a beginning hunter or somebody that's just thinking about going hunting? What are your thoughts there?
Well, and I think to the point of the conversation we've already had about kind of depending on where you are located in the state or depending on where you're planning on being located, that definitely can play a role in what to hunt first or what to hunt as a beginner. I would say things like squirrel and rabbit, because of their numbers in most parts of the state, are definitely good to start out with. They're not quite as elusive as some of the other species that we talked about, to that point of the turkey hunt, and some people saying that they've been turkey hunters all their life and had 2 or 3 success stories. But I think that with especially around here, for instance, in central Wisconsin, I see rabbits everywhere, depending on the time of season. And if you're in an area where there are trees that are nut-bearing trees, there are squirrels everywhere. So I think that those 2 species in particular, I would say, are great starter species for kind of the fur-bearers. And then definitely if you're in the northern part of the state, grouse are everywhere, depending on what kind of year you're talking about and where. But those are a good species. They're not quite as easy as far as kind of the beginning hunter is concerned, which is why I guess I would defer back to rabbits and squirrels as being kind of a great entry level opportunity. And it also depends on what kind of firearm you decide you're going to get. And there are some that are versatile for all of the species that we talked about thus far. So I'm sure you'll talk about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I'm an experienced hunter, and those grouse are hard for me to hit, Chris. Could use some help in that area. Jenna, what do you think? What are some game species that you would recommend for beginning hunters?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Chris that rabbit and squirrels especially are a good one to start out on. I would say, though, living in southern Wisconsin, you just have so many opportunities as far as dove hunting goes. And dove hunting is one of those where all that you really need is a shotgun and some ammunition. You don't really need to be all that camouflaged. You don't need decoys. You don't need a dog. So sitting out in a bed of sunflowers and with a group of friends being able to talk and giggle and like have fun until the birds come in and you have to stay still. I think that's a wonderful opportunity to start out as, even if there's only one hunter in the group and the rest are just out for a good time. The other one, I would say, turkeys are very elusive and they can be difficult to hunt, but being down in southern Wisconsin, not so much up by me. We get a tag every other year. But if you live in areas that have over-the-counter tags for turkeys, just get out there and turkey hunt. You'll make a lot of mistakes probably in the beginning, but there's no pressure. Don't put pressure on yourself, and it'll be fun, and you'll learn a lot, and you'll just kind of learn the habits of not only turkeys, but other species around you.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. And one thing I would add to that as well, for at least for turkey hunting, is there are a lot of learn to hunt turkey programs in the state. Some offered by the DNR, certainly others offered by conservation organizations and clubs. And so I would strongly encourage you to, unless you have a mentor or a friend that's going to take you, I would strongly encourage you to check out a Learn to Hunt turkey event in your area, and strongly encourage you to give that a try. It is, I don't know, you can tell I'm biased, but it's one of the best hunts in the state. I think it's just amazing. And whether you harvest the turkey or not, being out in the springtime and enjoying the mornings and the migrating birds and stuff, it's truly a real pleasure to be out there. Jana, you made a good point too about the low investment in equipment with dove hunting, and that's certainly a new hunter is certainly given that consideration. There's species that we hunt that cost a little bit more to get into, and for example, waterfowl hunting kind of comes to mind to me, where not only a shotgun but camouflage clothing and decoys and duck calls and so it's a little bit more of an investment there. And so those are all things that you want to consider. But doves, squirrels, rabbits, pretty low investment to give things a try. And Chris had mentioned squirrels before. A great table fare on a freshly killed squirrel, and so they taste pretty good as well. So Jenna had mentioned a little bit about hunting with dogs, and that is certainly a pleasure of a hunt. However, there's an investment for sure in a hunting dog. So for those species that are commonly hunted with a dog, let's say pheasants or ducks or geese, what do you tell people that don't have a dog, and how would they go about hunting them? And Chris, maybe we'll start with you. Any advice for somebody that wants to give that a try but doesn't have a dog?
Find a friend who likes to walk through the woods. No, actually, in all seriousness, I have done that quite a bit. When we've gone grouse hunting up north, we have a couple of folks and we kind of spread ourselves out, and obviously safely distanced and staggered. But, some of us are busting through the brush while others are kind of paying closer attention to what maybe kind of kicked up beyond us as we're walking through the woods. But, there are, I've been involved in quite a few of the Learn to Hunt activities in the state throughout the area for the variety of different upland game, for instance, with quail and grouse and pheasant and that sort of thing. And I would say there are, to your point earlier, there are quite a few Learn to Hunt events that take place. And in the process of participating in those events, you oftentimes will meet people that are incredibly eager to bring more folks out and to be able to do more of this with different people. And once you kind of make those connections, more times than not, you don't necessarily have to call them and ask. They're usually calling you and saying, hey, we're going out this weekend, or hey, we're going out, after work, or whatever the case may be, whatever the timing is. So I think that you don't necessarily have to be the individual who invests initially in those types of things. More times than not, you can find folks that already have dogs. And even to that point, within certain, of the Learn to Hunt events and that sort of thing, you can actually also utilize some of the shotguns and that sort of thing that are already in stock with the Learn to Hunt hosts. And that's a good way to get started and kind of get a feel for what it is that you're going to get eventually.
Yeah, great, Chris. Thank you. And it's often been said the best friends are those that have the beagles that you're going to go hunting with. And so to your point, you want to keep them close. Jenna, what about you? Any thoughts on for those that might not have a dog to hunt with?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a dog for quite some time after leaving my home with my parents' home, I should say. And I still walked the fields by myself, brought my dog who was not a hunter and hated guns out, and forced him to at least bring up one bird here or there. And I will say I did feel a little insecure when everybody else is out there in their garb and they have their $1,000 dogs, but just getting out, walking the fields and not being intimidated by other pheasant hunters or whatever. And you can still do a lot of waterfowl hunting as long as you have a canoe. You just have to keep in mind where your bird's going to land and if you're going to be able to retrieve it or not. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. You think about the benefits of a dog when you're hunting. It's to locate game and to retrieve game or find dead game. And on the front end, I think, many hunters can locate game or try to locate game themselves, but the real value is on the back end in retrieving that game. And you just, as a hunter, if you don't have a dog, you just need to be very aware of, whether that pheasant or that duck, as Jenna was saying, where it lands and get to it very quickly. And so anyway, it doesn't limit you, but you just need to kind of be aware of your hunting situation when it comes to that, and give it a try. And then who knows, you might really like it, and then you get a dog. So, and when it comes to getting dogs, as Chris mentioned, there's lots of people willing to help train, give advice. There's dog groups all over the state that are more than willing to help out somebody new to dog training. So give that some thought as well. What about another topic area that we thought about here is, Chris, what are your thoughts on animals when you're trying to find a place to hunt? What species are easiest to get access for hunting on say you're trying to get access to private land? Do you have any better success with one species over another?
And again, I feel like the answer always starts out with depending on where you are in the state. But I think that here down in the southern area, a lot of the farmland, farmers are very eager to let people on their land to hunt some of the species that are damaging crops, for instance. And so white-tailed deer, definitely there's some significant what they call egg tags for to reduce the deer population in these areas where deer are causing damage to agricultural fields. Raccoons definitely cause damage and that sort of thing. I think that there's also quite a few folks who just have a lot of land and say we've got an abundance of squirrels, or we've got an abundance of rabbits that are chewing up our shrubberies or our gardens or what have you. So I think that again, kind of depending on where you are, you can kind of gauge what tends to be the larger population of whatever species you may be interested in, and then that will allow you to kind of start looking at how you would approach a landowner and say, hey, looks like you might have some issues with deer damage, for instance. Or would you be interested in letting folks come on the property and hunt?
Sure. Great, Chris. Thanks. Jenna, any thoughts on that? Any specific species that's easier than others?
I think Chris pretty much nailed it. One thing I can add to it is that if a farm is enrolled in egg tag, so agricultural damage program, a lot of the time those fields are open up to hunters, whether it's bear hunting or deer hunting. So that's all within the DNR website that you can look at different agricultural properties enrolled in the egg damage program to kind of see if there's an opportunity to hunt those specific animals, whether it be turkey, deer, black bear.
Yeah, and one piece of advice too, if you are contacting a private landowner about hunting on their property, probably not best to lead with deer hunting, just because it's so protective, and they don't, especially if they're a stranger to you. Better off to talk to them about squirrel and rabbit hunting, and then get to know them, be respectful and have a presence there and get to know them. And sometimes that does then lead to them giving you permission to deer hunt on the property. So, and that's maybe a good place to plug our webinar next month is going to focus on where can we hunt. And so we'll be talking about public land and private land and some of these tips like that as well. So. All right, we're getting near the end here. Maybe one more question, just because, Jenna, this is for you. These species that we like to hunt, we talked a little bit about the management of them. And, as hunters, we support active management of these populations to continue to provide hunting opportunities. What are some things that the DNR does to support these game species populations that we've talked a little bit about?
Yeah, so I think everybody has to keep in mind that the majority of our biologists are pretty avid hunters. And so we want to see that, the best habitat, the best management for our species that we're most interested in, and species in general. And a lot of that comes with population monitoring, first and foremost, doing our population surveys, getting that data for our population estimates, and then using that data to create, to set quotas on those species that do have quotas. A lot of that, though, incorporates a lot of public comments, a lot of social science. So taking input from our the groups that we work very closely with, taking input from our public to see what they want to see on the landscape, and kind of using that biological carrying capacity and social carrying capacity together. But it doesn't just end there. The majority of the work that the department does is within habitat management. So that means wetland management, working very closely with our tribes, with the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, Ducks Unlimited, Wisconsin Wetland Association, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the list goes on. So applying for grants, working with our constituency groups to, restore wetlands for waterfowl hunters, plant wild rice and monitor wild rice, not only for our wild ricers, but also for our duck hunters. When it comes to forestry, we have 2.4 million acres of county forest alone that the DNR helps to liaise. So keeping in mind Young Forest Initiative, working with Rough Grouse Society. We have a deer management assistance program on private land that we can assist public landowners with creating better habitat, not only for deer, but also for other species that they may want to see more on their property. And then the foresters working with the managed forest law also on private land. And altogether that creates 7 million, public acres in Wisconsin alone, which is pretty amazing. And then also, I guess, grassland management, can't forget that when we're talking about Pheasants Forever, Sharp-tailed Grouse Society and things like that. So we're constantly working with other people, applying for grants, trying to create the best habitat possible for the species that not only us, but our public wants to see on the landscape.
Great answer, Jenna. And yeah, I was hoping you were going to plug those nonprofit organizations that support habitat work. These species, they don't just exist, especially the ones that are kind of specific to a habitat type like pheasants and grasslands. They don't just happen without the hard work and effort and support from landowners and agency personnel and hunters and everybody working together. So really appreciate that, Jenna.
Yeah, I hope I didn't miss any. I'm sure I did, though.
Well, it's always the danger when you start listing, you don't want to leave anybody out. But I think we recognize the direction you were going with that for sure. Okay, it looks like we got about 5 minutes left, and maybe we'll see if there's any questions that were typed in for us. I think, Katie, if you're going to help us out with that.
Yeah, the only question that I have that you guys haven't already answered was, at the top when you were talking about the great opportunities we have here in Wisconsin, and you were talking about deer, you mentioned Boone and Crockett, and I'm not sure that everybody knows what that is. So if you could explain what Boone and Crockett is and why that's so exciting for Wisconsin, that would be awesome.
Sure. The Boone and Crockett is, and I don't have any notes in front of me, and I'm not the historical expert on this one. Maybe Chris or Jenna is, but it's a record book for tracking harvests. And typically, when it comes to bears, it's the size of the skull. Deer, it's the size of the antlers, and really dates back to Theodore Roosevelt and admiration for some of the size and quality of some of the species that are out there. And so it's a long standing record book of tracking that information on those species. So Chris or Jenna, I'll turn it to you if you got more than I do on that one.
I think you pretty much covered it. I would say, there's Boone and Crockett, and then there's Pope and Young, and I think that one is for bow, one is for gun, and they definitely have a long history of the scoring of the various size of animals, and how that kind of translates into desirability and kind of that competitive spirit of not only conservation but also bragging rights for animals out there in harvests.
Jenna, any more to add?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. Any other questions, Katie?
Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your organization, and if people are interested in getting involved, where they can learn more?
Absolutely. Color in the Outdoors is like I was saying before, it's kind of an engagement advocacy organization. We do lots of different events throughout the course of the year. Our main focus is trying to get as much of a diverse population into outdoor spaces as possible. We work with BIPOC, LGBTQ, and differently abled communities across the state and actually around the country. And it's hunting, fishing, camping, canoeing, hiking, just about anything that you can come up with as far as outdoor spaces are concerned. We talk about it's not a competition as to what your outdoor space is. It's just trying to get folks outside. So if you're on your front lawn, that's technically an outdoor space and you're experiencing it as such. So we kind of focus on that sort of thing. But specific to this conversation, Color in the Outdoors helps with a lot of those learn to hunt events that we were talking about before. We have a few coming up yet this fall with Learn to Hunt Crossbow. And we do partner and collaborate with a lot of the government agencies as well as the non-governmental agencies that are doing a lot of these initiatives out there, and having some great success in getting more and more people outside. We have a website, colorintheoutdoors.com. We're on social media platforms, so we're not super difficult to find. And I always recommend that people join our mailing list and get more information that way. And they can always reach out to me directly as well. So yeah, definitely have had a lot of fun working with a whole variety of different organizations, but also a whole variety of different folks that have been involved in our programming. There's no age limit. Everyone's welcome to join us, and we definitely do things year round. We have a canoe trip actually coming up here on, I think, the 10th of September. So looking forward to doing that. We're collaborating with the Rock River Watershed Alliance and Madison School and Community Recreation. So looking forward to that. But yeah, definitely check out our website and sign up for more info and keep in touch.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I think that is all of the questions that we have, Bob.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Katie. And I guess I'll just wrap things up with a couple closing comments. A reminder, as I said earlier, hunting seasons start tomorrow. Dove hunting, early goose, and early teal season. And a good friend of mine described it then as the waterfall. We're at the top, and all the seasons are going to come to follow. And I would just encourage everybody to, if you're interested in anything you heard tonight, again, reach out to myself or Emily or our guest speakers. Take a look at the regulations and the season dates for those species that you're interested in, and get out there and enjoy it. I'd like to thank Jenna and Chris both for their time this evening and sharing their experiences with us. And thank you to everybody that joined us tonight. And I'll turn it over to Dana. Yep.
Dana, you're muted.
I'm muted.
There we go. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It wouldn't be a live webinar if there wasn't one person who forgot to turn off their mic. Remember that you can always find your adventure by visiting dnr.wisconsin.gov. Thank you again, Bob, Jenna, and Chris for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.